What if I told you the most powerful aircraft carrier ever built wasn't ready for the fighter it was designed to launch? A $13 billion nuclear fortress, a 100,000-ton floating city, the most advanced stealth jet on Earth. And for years, they couldn't properly work together, not because of politics, not because of incompetence, because of physics. Today we're breaking down the real reason the USS Gerald R struggled to operate the F-35C and why fixing that problem wasn't optional. It was existential. Let's start with something that looks almost magical. The F-35B, it hovers. It lands vertical. No catapults. No arresting wires. No violent launches. Efficient. Clean. So here's the obvious question. If we already have a jet that doesn't need complex launch systems, why not just use that on every carrier? The British did it. HMS Queen Elizabeth operates the F-35B using a ski jump ramp. Simple design, no catapults. Even the US Navy uses F-35Bs on amphibious ships like the USS Tripoli. So why doesn't the Ford just do the same? Why struggle with electromagnetic catapults? Why tear apart steel decks for upgrades? Why spend billions modifying the ship? Because that vertical lift fan, the miracle that lets the F-35B hover, comes at a cost of behind the cockpit of the B variant sits a massive lift fan. To engineers, that fan isn't magic. It's empty space. Space that could have been fuel. Space that could have been weapons. And at sea, fuel and firepower equal survival. Let's talk range. The F-35B has a combat radius of roughly 450 nautical miles. The F-35C, over 600 nautical miles. That 150-mile difference sounds small until you look at modern missile ranges. Anti-ship ballistic missiles can strike from hundreds of miles away. If your aircraft can't reach far enough, your carrier must sail closer to radar detection, closer to missile cancel, closer to destruction. Using the F-35B on a supercarrier would force a $13 billion ship to enter the kill zone just so its aircraft can reach targets. That's not strategy, that's suicide. The F-35C deletes the lift fan. It fills its wings with fuel. It stretches its reach. That extra 150 miles allows the carrier to stay outside missile range while still striking. That is not convenience, that is survival. The Ford-class carrier was designed in 2005. In 2005, the F-35C was still evolving. It existed mostly on digital drawings and projections. When engineers design a carrier, they lock in decisions permanently. Deck thickness, cooling pipe diameter, generator output, structural reinforcement. There's no update button once steel is welded. But the aircraft kept changing. Heavier, hotter, more powerful, more digital. The Navy made a massive industrial gamble, building the ship and the aircraft at the same time. It's called concurrency. They assumed that when both were finished, they would fit perfectly. They didn't, but the ship was locked into a 2005 understanding of the aircraft. The aircraft evolved beyond it, and suddenly the most advanced ship in the world wasn't fully ready for its most advanced fighter. Now imagine standing behind an F-35C in afterburner, one engine, 43,000 pounds of thrust, exhaust temperature approaching 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Steel doesn't have to melt to fail. At around 1,000 degrees, it begins losing strength. At 2,000 degrees, it softens dramatically. Repeated exposure to 3,600-degree exhaust doesn't instantly liquefy the deck, it warps it. A flight deck must be perfectly stable. Even slight deformation can disrupt launches and landings. The jet blast deformation can disrupt launches behind the aircraft were never designed for this level of concentrated heat. So the Navy didn't just add thicker steel, they redesigned the cooling system. Engineers embedded cooling channels inside the deflectors, pumping cold seawater through internal alloy veins to absorb the thermal punishment. The deck became a circulatory system. But heat wasn't finished. The traditional non-skid coating used for decades didn't melt. It exploded. The phenomenon is called spalling, chunks breaking off under thermal shock. Those fragments could be sucked straight into the engine of a $100 million aircraft. Epoxy was abandoned. In its place came twin wire arc spray. A ceramic metal armor fused to the deck at a microscopic level. This wasn't painting anymore, which was armoring. Heat was visible, vibration was not. During early electromagnetic catapult tests, pilots reported something terrifying. As the F-35C accelerated down the deck, the nose began oscillating violently. The catapult's pull frequency matched the natural frequency of the landing gear, resonance. In the most critical seconds of takeoff, pilots couldn't clearly read their helmet displays. At high speed, on a carrier deck, that's unacceptable. Redesigning the landing gear would have taken years. Instead, engineers rewrote software. Unlike old steam catapults, which are brute force systems, EMALS is programmable. They adjusted the acceleration curve, softened the initial milliseconds of pull. They broke the resonance rhythm, physics solved by code. Then came sound. The, sa, the, sa, by code. Then came sound. The F-35's engine produces around 150 decibels. At that level, sound is no longer just noise. It becomes force. Even with ear protection, sound waves travel through bone conduction directly into the skull. Unprotected exposure means permanent hearing loss. The solution wasn't thicker earmuffs. It was smart technology. The HGU-99P helmet filters harmful engine frequencies while allowing human speech through. You can stand near a roaring engine and still hear a teammate whisper. That's not comfort, that's survival. So why not avoid all this pain and keep relying on the F-18 Super Hornet? It's reliable. It carries heavy ordnance. It works because modern air defense systems have evolved. On advanced radar networks, a fully loaded Super Hornet lights up clearly. It is detectable long before it can strike. The F-35C changes that equation. It flies first, stealthy, silent. It penetrates dense air defense networks. It gathers data. It builds a real-time battlefield map. Then it transmits targeting data back to Super Hornets flying safely behind it. It doesn't replace the Super Hornet, it enables it. Without the F-35C, the fleet is visible. Without the F-35C, the fleet is blind. Now let's talk catapults. Steam catapults are powerful but brutal. They slam aircraft forward with enormous force, stressing airframes and shortening lifespan. EMALS, the electromagnetic launch system, offers precision. It can adjust force dynamically. It can launch heavy fighters like the F-35C gently enough to preserve structure alive. And it can launch lighter future unmanned drones without tearing them apart. Steam cannot. Yes, EMALS has faced reliability challenges, but it represents something critical: adaptability. The future of naval aviation isn't just heavy I-jets, it's unmanned systems, drones, lighter aircraft. EMALS is the bridge to that future. In 2025, the Ford returned to the shipyard for major upgrades. This wasn't routine maintenance. This was an invasive surgery. Cooling systems upgraded, deck coatings replaced, fiber optic bandwidth expanded, deflectors rebuilt. It's easy to call this failure, but it's harder to recognize it as evolution. The Ford became the test bed. Its cars will prevent future carriers, like USS John F. Kennedy, from repeating the same pain. Progress is not clean. It is forged. Step back. The F-35A is global. The F-35B is global. The F-35C exclusive. A stealth fighter with a 600-pack F-35B is flexible. The F-35B is flexible. The F-35C exclusive. A stealth fighter with a SIC operating from a nuclear-powered carrier that can stay at sea for decades. No other nation can replicate that exact combination. That capability allows the United States Navy to position an invisible air force anywhere on Earth without asking permission. That is blue water dominance. That is strategic leverage. Many people saw the Ford's empty deck and called it a failure. I see something else. I see what happens when technology evolves faster than steel. I see engineers confronting thermodynamics, resonance, acoustics, and data overload, and solving them. Strength is not avoiding mistakes. Strength is identifying physics errors and bending them. The Ford and the F-35C weren't incompatible. They were unsynchronized. And synchronization takes time. Because in modern warfare, dominance doesn't belong to the biggest fleet. It belongs to the one that owns the horizon. And now the fort does.